A lot of my art, I don't necessarily put people in it. I put spirits, ancestors, people from the past to kind of show respect for the people and the people that are there right now. Focusing on the buildings that tell the story of the people because, us as people, we're only here for a very short time. But like our buildings have been here for thousands of years. So those buildings tell a story of the people themselves.
Everyone, welcome. My name is Rachel with Artisans of Nations, a storytelling platform dedicated to honoring Indigenous voices through arts and culture. I'm really excited to present our second series of our podcast with you, and it is an honor to produce our second series here in partnership with the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts in downtown Santa Fe. We're here in the Store Gallery. It is so exciting to be here where all the happenings are happening, the art is arting, and we have a special guest with us that I'd love to introduce to you all. I'll let him do the honors of sharing more about himself, but please welcome with me our first guest of our second season, Brian Taaffe-Cordova. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Such an honor, a pleasure to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about you. Where are you from?
So I'm from Taos Pueblo, but I grew up here in Santa Fe, part-time here, and then moved to Hawaii and lived there half of my life. And so I'm a painter, printmaker, but I also grew up doing ceramics and many other art forms. Yeah.
Which medium would you say that you lean the most towards or that you're actively practicing in?
So the one I focus mostly on is painting. So mostly painting, and it's mostly Pueblo architecture. That's kind of where I focus on, especially being from Taos Pueblo. We have the very iconic buildings and, the UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is Taos Pueblo. So focusing on Pueblo architecture mostly in my paintings, and Southwest design.
That's great. For those who don't know or may not be familiar with Pueblo architecture, can you share a little bit more about that style and design, or what are its unique characteristics?
So Pueblo architecture is it's Adobe architecture, but it's flat roofs, mud buildings. It's, you can find actually Adobe all around the world, but here in the Southwest, it's a little bit different, especially in Taos. Our buildings are one of the only multi-story Adobe architectural, designs that are still kind of left in the Southwest. But, you find Pueblo-style architecture all around New Mexico, especially here in Santa Fe. You had the Santa Fe revival, Pueblo architectural revival style that happened in like the 1910s. So a lot of these buildings, like this building we're in here right now, is based off of all of those, which were based off of the Taos Pueblo and a lot of the Pueblo buildings. So Adobe, which is mud, straw, pretty much just built in the bricks and you just make it up. Yeah.
Tell me more about, let's go back to being from Taos Pueblo, and you're mentioning these really rich dynamics about it, about the multi-level story buildings and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is absolutely really significant and important to this place and its community. Tell us more about what it means to be from the Pueblo. Like those who are in the art world, right, when they know of Taos Pueblo artists and the Society of Taos artists and that whole arena of what it was historically. In a contemporary lens, which is what you paint, why is it important to you to paint where you're from or your people or your community?
It took a long time to think about and to kind of come up with that. You mentioned the Society of Artists, Taos Society of Artists, which is Taos Founders is what they were called. And they were an original group that came from the East Coast and moved here. And actually they were on a journey to go further into the southwest, but they're on a wagon. Their wagon wheel broke and they were outside of Taos and they had to go in and fix it. And they went into Taos and they kind of went in there and they were like, wow, like, why don't we just stay here and paint all this? There's native people. There's this, like, you know, the mountains, everything's very beautiful in Taos. So they stayed and they kind of formulated the Pueblo style of painting. And so this was a lot of people that weren't from here. And so a lot of my journey and like thinking about painting was, you know, how can we reclaim a little bit of that back for the native culture, the native people? And so for me, it was, you know, I'm from there. I grew up there. You know, I did move away, but I am from there. So it's like kind of reclaiming a little bit of that, you know. Everybody thinks of the Taos Founders as the main people that painted the Pueblo, but there are a lot of other artists that are up there that do paint the Pueblo. And, you know, being from there, you have a very unique voice in telling the story, as opposed to, you know, somebody from the outside looking in, you're inside looking in. But that in itself has other, you know, I won't say problems or issues, but, you know, you got to be more respectful of things. You know, there was dances that were painted back then that you can't necessarily do. There was, you know, like, sacred things like our clowns, or, you know, the different like kivas, things like that, that I would never put in any of my artwork. But, you know, they are not from here, so they had a different perspective. So they were doing, and in a different time. It's a very different time, you know. Now I think being respectful is probably one of the main things I try to put in my art. So like a lot of my art, I don't necessarily put people in it. I put spirits, ancestors, people from the past to kind of to show respect for the people and the people that are there right now, and not necessarily focusing on the people, more of the buildings that tell the story of the people. Because, you know, us as people, we're only here for a very short time, but like our buildings have been here for thousands of years. So those buildings tell a story of the people themselves. So when I focus on the buildings, it's also talking about the people and the ancestors and everybody that's come before, you know. So that's kind of where I come in and speak to the Pueblo.
I really like what you said about how this buildings tell the stories of the people. Do you have any specific stories about any buildings or part of the Pueblo that you could share? Or is that too sacred and something that you have to keep to yourselves?
It is just something for myself and for family and everything and stuff. But, you know, so I grew up a lot with my grandmother when I was little. And I spent a lot of time with her. And during winter time, it's called quiet season. And it's a time for everybody to just kind of go do their thing and let the land heal, everything kind of gain life again during that. So there's no people around, don't really do dance and stuff. But at nighttime, the men would go up on top of the buildings and they would sing. And my grandmother loved that. And I remember I used to go with her to our village house. And then it would be, because this happens at nighttime, you know, and we would go out and she would just listen to the men sing and tell me what they were saying and what they were singing about. And so that was kind of a story that, you know, that she brought me into and taught me a lot of these things that I didn't necessarily know. And she would tell me the stories of why they're singing and what they're doing and just a lot of things. And I always say is like my grandmother was a huge part of my life in growing up. You know, she was the matriarch of our family. And so she taught us all a lot. And so having those memories of my grandmother, you know, in the Pueblo, listening to, you know, these guys up there singing and telling stories was, you know, just a very special thing.
That is special. What's your grandmother's name?
Her name was Rose Cordova.
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah. Is that why I noticed in your paintings you have a red figure?
Yes.
Okay?
So my grandma Rose, so she passed away. And so for me, it's very important to put her in a lot of things because, yeah, that was just for our whole family, she was just such an amazing person. She just cared for everybody. She cared for animals. She cared for our people.
Aww.
Like for our whole family, she was like that one center kind of piece. And, you know, we all do miss her very much. So for me, it's just putting her in there is always just, you know, a little something for myself and for my story, you know.
Sure. Very heartfelt is what it feels like.
It's kind of funny because like my teacher at school, he'd always get mad at me because he'd be like, "You're painting these paintings, but I don't see you in these paintings." And he would always give me this like, "Brian, why are you painting like this? Why are you in this painting?" And I'd be like, "But it's my painting," like, and he'd be like, "But I don't see you in it." And so when I started doing these little things like this, putting my grandmother, doing different things, that was all of a sudden, it was like, that's me in there now. That's my family. That's my, the way I speak artistically and putting those kind of things, so those kind of stuff was like really speaks to me and how I do my art and why I do it.
That's really important as an artist. I think you mentioned something in that too of how your professor was challenging you, or maybe he was questioning you of what spoke to you or resonated with you. Let's dig in a little bit more about the challenges that you face. Like, what can you unpack a little bit more? Like, what challenges have you faced throughout your artist career?
I had a teacher before my teacher. So Jim Rivera was the one that kind of pushed me to find my style. But before him, my teacher and mentor was Jeff Cam, and he was very academic and very structured. And it's like, you have to start from the beginning. You have to learn to draw. You need to learn how you line work, then shadows, and you start from black and white, and then you start adding color. But he was also like, you find an artist or a group of artists that you like, and then you copy them at first, and you learn how they do everything, and you start from copying these masters and everything. And so, like, first he had me copying Michelangelo, drawing Michelangelo and doing these kind of things. And I was like, oh. But then I found the Taos Founders, and I was like, well, that's Pueblo architectural stuff is what I want to focus on, and that's what they do. So I started copying them. And unfortunately, Jeff passed away, and, I couldn't keep going with him. But then I met Jim, and Jim came with a completely different side of the art where it's like, you got to think about what you're doing. Why are you using this color? Why did you put that line there? Why is that person there? Why the whys, And he was the one that was like, okay, I see you could paint like these guys, but now find your style. And that was a real weird thing and real hard thing for me to kind of find at first, because I was so stuck in this like academic way or like copying way of like figuring out how to paint like these guys. And then I was all of a sudden like, oh, now I got to actually do my own thing and find out my own style. And so that was like the first real hurdle. And once I found that, then I started getting my voice and doing that. But then, as you come back to it, as an artist, you got to create the art. But then if you want to be, a selling artist, or you want to do anything like that, you got to figure out the business side of it. The going out, the meeting people, the going to galleries and talking to other people, the museums and everything, that was the other part, because I am an introvert and I wasn't really big into going out and meeting people on that. But so I had to like kind of force myself into that role and just go out and put myself in situations over and over and over, so I can learn how to talk to people and learn how to do these things that I wasn't necessarily taught in school. So I think that was a big hurdle. And I know for a lot of Native artists in general too, especially ones that are coming from a reservation, they're very shy. And that is a very intimidating thing, to go out and talk to people and have these, conversations about art. The thing about galleries is there's a big door, it's real heavy. And just even opening the door for somebody like that, it's very intimidating. Sure. And so just getting over those kind of hurdles and things were, in the beginning, were like kind of the harder things. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to start selling stuff, and I got to do this, and I got to do social media, and then I got to do all these different things that I'm like, I don't even paint that much. I got to do all these other administrative things. You're like, don't want to do this. I just want to paint, So those are always big hurdles. And, I'm glad I realized that right away, that this is what I got to do to move along in this, art path, career, whatever you want to call it. I'm very lucky because I did do stuff before. Like, I played music my whole life and I DJ'd for most of my life. So half of that was all just going out and meeting people and meeting club promoters and club owners and stuff like that. So it's kind of the same thing. So I could just take what I learned there and then just transfer it over to art, which was pretty, not that hard. It was just switching up lingo and way I talk and different things, but still kind of the same realm.
That's wonderful to hear how those skills transferred. And they do add to each other as well in terms of being an artist. Music is also an art form as well. And now you're just expressing yourself through paint,
Yeah.
through color on canvas.
Yes, exactly.
Every artist journey, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask anyone, whether they're a guest on our podcast or not, is who has inspired you during your process or during this journey. You mentioned talking to galleries or learning how to talk to customers or promoters or people like that. Has there been any person that has inspired you the most?
Like within the business sense or within the art sense?
That's a good question. Let's go for both. Like, who
Both.
has inspired you art-wise?
The first person that really got me inspired to do art and to paint and to do oil painting, his name was Bryce Myers, and I was in Hawaii when I went back to school in Hawaii. And he was an old surfer guy, and he just loved to paint. He'd go surf and then go paint afterwards. And he was my teacher, and we had a lot in common. I'd go surf and then go paint too, and we had so much in common. But he kind of just was the first person to really push me to do it, because he's like, I see you know how to do this. Just keep doing it and doing it, and really pushed me to do that. There's artists that I've been inspired by, but I'll say the people that are close to me are really the ones that have really inspired me to do all this and just, push. And, like I said, my teachers, Jeff, Jim, all these other people. But then if you go onto the business side, Cindy Hall, Charlie Hall from Manitou Galleries, those two are the ones that have really pushed my business sense. And for me to, learn all these things, I've learned so much from those guys. I will always speak good words about them and send people their way, everything, because they're just, very good people that have helped me for, since the beginning. They're like, oh, you really like to do this? I was like, yeah. I come to your gallery every day and look at these paintings and I just check them out every day. And they're like, yeah, I've seen you here every day. And I first met Charlie, and Charlie was the one who started giving me all this business advice. Do this, do that, do that. And then they introduced me to these other artists like Jerry Jordan, who's another Taos painter that does a lot of kind of stuff based on the Pueblo and things like that. And he's taught me a lot. Or Alvin Giltapia, all these other painters that do Pueblo architectural stuff, but different than but they all have shown me and talked to me and given me so much good advice. And I think for any artist, especially when you're first starting, is finding mentors within the art realm, but also within the business realm, that you can learn from both. And I think that's one of the most important things in just life, is having mentors, people that can guide you in the right direction, especially when you're doing business and you're doing all your own things. Having somebody that's done it before that can lead you down the right path will help you, and it will speed your momentum up or whatever you're trying to do. But just having somebody to bounce things off of is great thing. Here we talk, we always, have conversations about this stuff, and that's great to have people like that, Sometimes as an artist, you get stuck in your studio and you just kind of sit there and you just do art all day, and then you're like, how is this look? And you're sitting there by yourself. I'm to my cats, what do you guys think? And they just look at me I don't know, I don't care, just come on. But having other people there to kind of bounce things off or have ideas or any little thing. So just, I'll say, yeah, having mentors and people like that is super important.
Totally very important. I agree. Even in my own journey. Yeah, I owe it to my mentors and those around me who have contributed to my own success and challenges as well.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note, you mentioned about helping others as well, and speaking in the context of even where we're at physically here at the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts store. Mm-hmm. And you work here as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can we just really briefly touch upon how do you see your role working here in retail, also helping not only you as an artist, but also helping other Native artists grow in their careers? What kind of stepping stones do you see while working here?
Well, there's several other facets to it as well. I do love working here because I'm up front. I get to talk to people and I get to talk to all the different patrons, different people coming through, and everybody's got their own little, perspective on Native art and different things. And one of the things I like to do is teach people.
Hmm.
A lot of people come in and they don't really necessarily know what Native art is, or they think of Native art as a historical thing, as something from the past that's not, it's been done, it's pottery, it's blankets, it's whatever, jewelry that's historical. And working in a contemporary Native museum, it switches all that up because, from 60s to present day. So we are all pretty much living artists and stuff. And it's like, Native people, there are historical artwork, but we also are doing artwork right now. So I do like to play the kind of the role of teaching people. I like to educate them. We have tons of books that will teach you about Native culture, different things and stuff. So that's one of the roles here. But also within the store and within, Native students and stuff, or artists that are kind of coming up, one thing we like to do here at the store is, promote their work. We buy artwork from them. We buy stuff and we put them into the museum so they can get like a little bit of professional, development. With this gallery right here that we're in, we put up student alumni work. And one of the main things we're trying to do is get student work in here and then kind of teach them how to fill out applications, different kind of things to get, their work in a gallery, but also so they can get, a little for their resume, which is a great thing to get,
How about grants as well?
Grant writing, whatever, just anything you can get on your resume is going to help all these different, avenues that you're trying to go down. And so giving students a little bit of that, push to get them to, a more professional, I guess you would say, development and, more of professional training, which, I didn't really get at school. So if we can do it here, that's, amazing to help, just guide them, give them a little guidance,
Uh-huh. That's wonderful. That's really inspiring to hear about the store and what the vision is and the mission of the store, because it's connected with the school, correct?
Yes.
The Institute of American Indian Arts?
Yes.
Awesome. And did you attend there as well?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2023. And so, like I said, I was in Hawaii. I decided to come back and go back to school. And so, IA was like a great opportunity to, one, move back and be here with my mom and family, but also just go back to school and get my fine art degree when I decided, that's what I kind of wanted to do. So, and it's a great institution. It's, they help you with so many scholarships, do so many things. It's not super expensive. The classes are small, and so you get like one-on-one help from teachers and different things. So
That's
It
awesome.
was cool. And I have a lot of family that went there and graduated from there. So yeah.
That's awesome. I would love to wrap up our conversation with a few things. One of which is, I noticed you have a painting next to you.
Yes.
Can you tell our audience a little bit more about it, and why do you choose a more focused subject of this ladder? What's the meaning of why you wanted to focus on this specific subject?
Well, I guess a lot of what I do then is about cultural knowledge and a little bit about, like I said, teaching people about things. In Taos Pueblo, or all Pueblos, we have ladders that go up to the roof. And a lot of what I like to think about is, you're going from the ground to the sky, and it's almost an ascending into the heavens and that. But in historical terms, the ladder is very important because that's how you actually got into the buildings. There wasn't actually any doors, So in the tops of the ceilings, there was holes, and that's, you lift the ladder up, put it down. And a lot of that was for protection. For me, it's a lot about design, but also how I grew up. As little kids, we used to run up and down, run up on the ladders and go back down and run around and stuff. But it's very interesting for, like, as an artist, you have your own interpretation, but it's always cool to hear when somebody else gets to see your painting and then all of a sudden they have their own story or something behind, what they're seeing. And especially a lot of people, like you said, go to Taos Pueblo because it is a very, significant Pueblo in the UNESCO world. So people come from all over to go there, and they come here and they see a painting and they're like, I remember when I went there, like 30 years ago, and I got to go up the ladders and we got to get up top, and they have all these stories, and it's very just cool to hear what they have to say about it, not necessarily what I have to say. Sometimes I don't even say I'm the artist. I just like to go and just hear what somebody has to say about it, just to give, and you always learn something by listening to somebody else. There's something I might not have even seen in the painting that somebody says, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're right about that, huh? But also it's fun. It's very colorful,
Yeah, that's
I
important.
love colors, And like I said, I'd always studied these other painters and other things, and their colors were so just dark and just like, I'm like, no, I don't see the Pueblo that way. That's not how I see it. I see it very vibrant, very full of life, very, and that's the way I want to portray it. So, and I just do love colors, growing up. One, here you have the earth tones, the very, vibrant earth tones, but also then in Hawaii, it's just colors, so much color and everything. So that, just brings life. Color brings life, and just
it's good.
Makes me happy.
It does. It makes a lot of people happy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your stories and your journey as an artist. And how can our audience find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, Instagram is wish161. I do a lot of stuff from there, so you can see a lot of my artwork. I also have briantaaffe.com and Facebook, Brian Taaffe. And I'm at the museum all the time, so stop by the museum.
Great.
Come say hi.
For people who are passing through Santa Fe, other than here at the museum, can they find you at any other markets or any gallery shows?
Right now it's pretty open. I'm going to probably do some stuff up at Bandelier and do a cultural demonstration up at Bandelier National Park. We'll be here in this gallery for the next, I don't know, like 6 months or something. So there's plenty of stuff here. And just whatever kind of comes up, Indian Market will be here, and I'll be selling out, right here in the museum as well. I'll also be here just hanging out. So just stop by the museum if you want to find me. It'll be, I'm here.
Great.
I love to talk, have good conversations. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you. And speaking of a good conversation, this very much was. So thank you so much for your time, Brian. Really appreciate you and sharing more. And also for our audience who may not know yet, but Brian was featured in our inaugural coffee table book titled New Beginnings, our volume 1. He's here on the front cover. Can't miss him. But yeah, you can also purchase a copy here at the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts store in downtown Santa Fe. So thank you so much, Brian. Thank you to our partners here at the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts store, and to our other community and industry partners. We really appreciate you. To our audience, thanks so much for listening and joining our conversation. Till next time, keep sharing your stories, keep creating peace. You can find Artisans of Nations online and on Instagram. You can listen to our podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple channels at Artisans of Nations.